Welcome to today's YouTube video. We are going to dive into the world of clean code architecture. We'll explore a powerful workframe that brings order to the chaos, a structured project architecture consisting of controllers, services, routes, and middlewares. So I like to set up my project before I actually start coding, right? So what we need to add into here that we don't have is our route, like these are our API routes. All right, so we're gonna have API routes, and then we're gonna add another folder over here which is gonna be services, add another folder which is gonna be middlewares, right? And then services, middlewares, we can just add a folder for our enums. um then yeah, I think that's fine for now. So what I would like us to do is actually also install npm install our .env, right? So we can go about like just removing code that we don't need, which is these routes over here, because we're gonna set it up from scratch. So we'll just use this from our express JSON over here. Alrighty. So what we need to do is actually set up like our host and our port, right? So we want to say set up our host and our port, and these are coming from our environment variables, right? So how we actually get our environment variables is we need to require .env .config. Let me just increase the size of this a bit. Okay, that's too big. That's even hurting my eyes. Okay. Okay, I think this is fine for now. Let me just zoom back a bit. Okay, yeah. Awesome. So another thing that we want to do is actually remove this and just say app.listen, right? And this is going to be listening from this port and the host, and we'll need like an arrow function, and we'll just console log this from here, right? And then we should also remove these. I don't think we need that. Okay, awesome stuff, right? um So first and foremost, what we would want to set up with this project is like our services, where our business logic is gonna lie, right? So we're gonna remove some of these functionalities from here and just add it into our services, right? So what's gonna happen over here is we'll have our user service.ts, right? So any interaction with the DB are gonna happen here in our services, right? Um, so we'll say this is class user service, right? And then yeah, okay, this is gonna be our user service. We know for if we've got a class, we'd want to have like some sort of like a constructor. And then okay, let's come over here and copy and paste all of these, right? All of these functions over here, right? So what are we actually trying to do, right? So we'll remove these because our request stuff is gonna come from our controllers. So this is gonna be just get users, right? Get users endpoint, and we want to have like our user repository, right? So how we can have our actual user repository is first and foremost we'll need to have like a query runner, which is going to be query runner, right? I know you can just have your user repository from your app data source dot get repositories, but I like to do it like this, Right, so over here we can have like our private user repository, which is a repo repository of from this entity user. So like to have it as null on here and then just initialize it from here, right? So this will equal to our this dot query runner dot get repository. No, it's query runner dot manager dot get repository, right? So this is gonna get it from our user entity. Alrighty, so now we've instantiated like our actual user repositories. So okay, yeah, this is get user by ID. This is gonna be our get user by ID, and this is gonna have our actual, let's just call this user ID, right? And then this will be of type string. And we actually don't even need this over here, because what we need is just to pass in our ID as that, right? No, this is a number. Get one where that is that, right? Okay, I think this is fine. Alrighty, so here we can actually get user by ID. Here we want to say create a user. So how do we go about creating this user, right? So this user is gonna come from our user data. So this is gonna come from our user data, which is gonna consist of all of these jiggly bells, right? Actually, let me see. User data. Does that work out? Okay, I think that does work. Okay, so this is gonna have like our user data, right? And then when we wanna remove our actual user, we'll just have user, which is a number, right? And we're just not gonna need all of these, and just pass that user, find user by that. Okay, let me just, because I know if I use ID, right, it's just gonna say find user by ID. Let me just change this to ID, yeah, because then it's just gonna use the ID of that. Okay, that's fine. Okay, awesome stuff. I think we should be all sorted on this side, which is our services, right? And then now we can go to our controllers and actually clean up some stuff, right? Okay, so righty. So what we need to do from our actual services is actually have like a controller. Okay, we can remove these controllers over here. So what we can do is have this as a const. We don't need this user repository because we're gonna use a no. When I have query runner, this is our query runner, right? This is coming. Is this our query runner? This is coming from our app data source dot create. Wanna create our query runner like that. Okay, yeah, awesome. So this is all good. And then what we'll also need to say is we wanna also instantiate like our user service, right? And then this is new user service, and in our user service we see over here that we're actually passing in the query runner, right, into our user service. Okay, that's fine. So in order for us to get all users, what we then have to do is, okay, let's just do it like this. We'll just say export, right, as async, right, export const async, and this is an arrow function, right? And here we'll just say await. No, we want to do a try catch. Try catch over here. So try catch over here, and then we'll have our actual error, and here we can just say return await, and then we can have our user service dot get users. So this will call our get users endpoint, and no, this has to be response dot, right, response dot status, right, which is gonna be our status code 200, but we want to have that like in our enum, right? HTTP status code dot wait, let me just have it as HTTP status HTTP status code dot enum dot ts. Want to specify this is an enum, right? And then we'll just export our enum, right? And then this is HTTP status code, right? And then over here I already have my status codes prepped up. Okay, so that's all I'll need. Yeah, this should be all I'll need, right? So this equals to this, that, and 500 is internal server error, and bad request is that, right? So this will return a status, an HTTP status, right? Okay, right? And then our JSON that we're gonna get back is gonna come from our actual users equals to await user service dot get users. So it's get users. Awesome stuff. So this is just gonna return that for us. Alrighty. So we also wanna get one by that, right? So this is gonna be export const, then we'll just equate this to async and make this an arrow function, right? And the same thing is gonna happen here. We'll just copy this. Oh, sorry, my bad. So if we actually get to like an error, we'll just have a status response, right? Dot our status status, right, which is going to be coming from this dot internal server error dot json, and this will just get our error for us, right? So yeah, we'll just copy all of this jiggly stuff until here. Alrighty, so yeah, we'll have the same thing for get a user by ID. So what's happening over here in our request, we're trying to get the ID of the user, and we're just gonna say get user by ID, and we're gonna be passing this ID over here, and if that is successful, so this will just get a user's data, and then if not, then just return null. Alrighty. Okay, so return the error. Sorry, my bad. And then over here we do the same thing, export const. Then if we want to save, we can just say async that, and we'll make this an arrow function over here. So we'll be getting our actual body and stuff. So let me just paste this, right? And come over here, copy this. Alrighty. Because the only thing that we probably want to do is just save, right? So what we need to do is just come here and say this is a create user, and we'll be passing in this user, right? With our actual create user, we're going to be passing in this user. Let's see what actually happens over here. So we're passing in this user, and we're actually returning the user that we're actually saving. All right. Result. We'll just call this result, and then we'll just pass in the result over there. We're not using this guy. And yeah, so it's actually we're just trying to clean up this code. I know that I'm going a bit fast, but it's actually just some repetitive stuff that I'm doing over here, right? So this is gonna be async const remove, right? And then this is gonna be an arrow function over here, and here we're just trying to remove like a user. So let's copy this guy, which is get one user, because it's almost the same thing, right? So over here, because from this request we're getting the ID of that user, and we're trying to remove, right? And the remove functionality is actually happening in our actual service. Okay, so how do we now remove like a user, right? We just need this, and we want to say remove. We want to call in our remove user, and the actual user that we're removing will actually, yeah, we'll actually console log the result of that. Right. Okay, that's all we need in our actual like controllers, right? So what do we have, right? So over here we already have like our actual, okay, let's just try to npm run start. Right, so we have like our controllers, but we haven't set up like our actual routes. So currently, I don't think we can actually do anything, right? Because if we were to come to our actual postman, right, and just try to run something, it will actually fail. So let's look at this. So this was supposed to be listen. Sorry, my bad. npm run start. So when we start this up, let's see what happens. So while the server starts up, we see over here we don't have our actual routes, which is something that we need to set up. So for endpoints that used to work, if I try to like just run a get old users, I won't actually get anything because we don't have a route mapping to that, right? Okay, so how we can set up like our actual route, we can say app.use, and our route that we're trying to set up over here is /users, right? And then here in users, we're trying to set up like our user router, right? Okay, so now how does this work, right? So we need to come to our routes and actually set up our user routers, right? So here we'll just have user, right? Routes, user routes or user router. Let's just go with user router. Okay. No, let's just say user routes. That makes more sense. Right, okay, user routes, and over here we're just gonna have like a console user route, and this is gonna equal to express dot routes, right? No, express dot router, right? Okay, so in order for us to use this express dot route, we need to import all as express, right, from our express package, right? So yeah, so that's what we need. And here we'll need to export these express. We need to export our actual user router, right? So now if we come here to our actual index, right, we can now reference this user router, right? But if we try to say npm run start, we actually won't be able to get anything because we do have like our actual router, but it's not mapping to any endpoint. So we know that this user's route works, right? Which is like the starting like route. So we have this route, but if we try to get right that we don't have any endpoint, right? In there, right? So how we can achieve that is actually having our user route dot, we can have route, right, our empty route, and say for get all users, right? So this is gonna say for our get all users, right, what we want to do is actually call this function from our controller, right? So this is the get all users controller, right? So now if we were to stop the server and restart, let's see what actually happens. So if I were to test this out over here with our get all users, okay, yeah, let's try to get it up and running. So what's actually happening? Okay, so we see over here that we actually have something happening. We're running this from port 3000 and we're trying to access it. Okay, there's a mistake that I actually did, right? Because here our default port was supposed to be from port 3002. Alrighty, so now if we try to run that, let's see what happens. We shouldn't have any user, right? So yeah, let's go about this. So we should have like an empty array. How do we test this out now? Okay. Oh, oh, so it happens that we do have like data in our database from that previous our previous like data that we actually inserted in our database. Okay, sure thing, that's fine. And then now let's set up the other routes, right? So over here, so we want to say get one user, but this get one user, okay, that's coming from that. Want to say, want to have like our save, and we want to have our remove, right? So these are just functions from our user controllers. And how we want to set up our get one user is over here. We're gonna pass in like the user ID as a parameter, right? And this is a get request. For our save, it's gonna be a post request, and for our delete, this is gonna be delete. But with delete, we also need a pass in our ID, right? Okay, so now let's go back to Postman and actually test out to get user by ID. But now I need to stop the server because there is no hard reload. So I think this should work. Let's see, moment of truth. Yeah, let's wait up for the server to actually start off. So but ideally what should actually happen is if we hit this should get our user by ID, right? These are all running from port 3002. Alrighty, so we do get that user. So um this is also running from 3002. Okay, what's happening over here, right? So we can have something like this, right? and yeah, let's post and actually see what's actually happening. Yeah, we did actually add like a user. Like alternatively, what you can do is you can have like your environments, right? Variables over here. So you can have like global variables, and instead of just using this, you can just set up like your actual host, right? And your port, actually your base URL in your global variables, and just use that instead of this. Yeah, but with all that being said, I think this is a good way of actually just trying to like maybe clean up like your code and actually like structure your project. I know like there's many ways of like actually killing like a cat, and this is like one of them. And if you like the video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, peace.